Hello and welcome to Chats Over Coffee with my yoga teacher, the world's best yoga teacher and comedian podcast crossover thing. Yeah, I think we're still that. I don't know another one. Don't tell us. So, yeah, I'm Peter, who does do comedy, and I'm here with Kayla, who does yoga teaching.
Hello, everyone.
So just before the show, we're just going to talk about what you might have planned for your July for your business, in case you've got stuff going on. Please tell me something so I can stop talking.
Okay. So in July, I'm going to be covering 3 classes over here at a studio near Leeds called Cafe Yoga Horsforth, so over in Horsforth. So if you want to come to a public class that is open for all, it is one of the few in-person classes that I'm teaching, so please do look that up if you fancy that. And then I will probably teach another Sunday morning class for a couple weeks in July, but that's not set in stone just yet. I haven't actually organised that. Something that I'm working on for hopefully launching in August is something to do with some membership stuff, so stay tuned for the August announcement.
We'll make sure that's a short episode so you can talk for ages up top.
What about you? What have you got going on in July?
Just regular stuff like skiing around the country, doing some festival in Surrey at some point, going to Cardiff Glee, just all over the place, really. So yeah, again, nothing else to add there, really. I'm just a jobbing act. But peterbrushcomedy.com has all the dates on that. That's in the link below. I do have a sketch I'm trying to write, but I don't know if I'll put it out. I should put it out before the election if I do it. That'll be on Instagram if it turns out not to be shit. So just follow me there as well. And so I'll put links to those, and then plan to say something slightly more interesting about my career at some month in future. And your website is the best place, isn't it? KaylaMcCormack.com, and also
yes.
I have an Instagram that's also linked, and it's Kayla McCormack Yoga if you want to follow that. So the show can start, and we'll just do that then, shall we?
Yeah, enjoy. I'm trying to enjoy the process and not be bothered about how long it takes.
Good attitude for life in general.
Yeah.
I often think I'm like working towards something, but I'm not really, do you know what I mean? Like a destination, I don't know what it is.
Like if you wanted a goal or something, like if you're like, oh, I really want to be on TV or something like that, but then it's like, do I really want that? So
well, being on TV doesn't mean anything now, does it? It's an embarrassment to be on TV.
True.
Well, in a way it is. It's not cool.
Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I wouldn't say no to TV, but it's not. It's too establishment, man.
I do think that, like, I know of a few people who are like have the whole thing going on like YouTube and stuff, and they're very, very popular. And like, I don't know, even someone like Aussie Man Reviews or something, you've got lots of interviews with really famous people, Brad Pitt and Jack Black and all the, but he is just a YouTube.
Yeah, that's where everything is. It's all on YouTube or podcasts.
I like how you say that's where everything is. And I just said yesterday that YouTube is just full of crap.
Well, yeah, it is, yeah.
There's good stuff on there as well, but you have to wade through all the crap to find.
You mean fake news?
Not just fake news, but I mean like actual, like if you tie a ribbon to your shorts and pull twice, it'll turn into a loop-de-loop, and look at that. Just like actual nonsense. Or how to make your toilet colourful by like pouring dyes in it. I know, just like actual nonsense. No, I don't mean like opinion. I disagree.
Some of that weird stuff's good. Have you ever seen like a short video that's just sort of come out of nowhere, and it's all like cooking hacks and stuff, like putting the coriander through a cheese grater backward cuts all the leaves off?
Yeah, I saw that one. But then I feel like that kind of stuff doesn't work as well as you think. It's like their colander was perfect.
No, it was probably like 25 takes.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like, you don't know if anything's real either. I think that's the other thing, is a lot of the time you can see like, I don't know, fail videos or something like that, and it's like, oh, well, that was fake. That was set up. It was a set up fake fail.
Yeah, it's true. You get suspicious of...
I did see something funny yesterday. Something about the sumo wrestlers have a little festival that they do every year where they hold a crying baby. And the baby that cries the most is like going to be blessed for the year or whatever. Or however you want to say. I don't know, blessed isn't the right word. Have good luck or something like that. And it was like, what? And all the moms and all the families around like, oh, I was so happy because he was crying when we got there, and I thought he'd be the crying baby. But then as soon as the sumo wrestler picked him up, he was really happy. And he didn't cry. And I'm like, this is weird. Why do you want your kid to cry?
I'd like to see a follow-up for the next year to see how these babies turned out.
I know, right? I just thought it was really funny. I was like, what a random... But I think that's real.
Yeah, well, you don't know, do you? It sounds real. That's the thing. That's the trick. To come up with something that sounds real.
I recognise some of the sumo wrestlers. So. But then obviously they could be...
Could be AI.
fake.
Deep fake,
yeah. However so
yeah, that's the thing, that's the trick, is to make something seem believable, because if something feels right, then people just won't interrogate it, will they? They'll just go, oh yeah, that sounds about right. Why would you spend all of your time fact checking every single thing that you see if it feels correct on an emotional level?
Well, it's hard because some of it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter, say, if that baby video was real or fake. Like, it literally has no bearing on my decisions or my life or what I'm going to do. So I wouldn't check it because it doesn't matter. But whereas something that does matter, I may try and check. Like, a while back, it went all over, probably because I've got more health and wellness on my social medias anyway, but it went all over social media that women need more sleep than men. The only study that's ever been done that would indicate that women need more sleep than men was that there was a study, it was a small sample as well, like maybe a few hundred, and then it showed that women potentially could need 11 minutes more than men. It's like, well, that's not really, I mean, how can you say 11 minutes? Like, that's like on average, obviously it's like in averages, isn't it? And it's like, well, on averages, I probably slept 11 minutes more today than I did yesterday. Like, it's not, just, like 11 minutes is, what is that when you're talking about 8 hours of sleep, Anyway, I just found that really annoying because it went all over everywhere. Everyone hopped on board this idea that women need more sleep than men. And like, oh, you should embrace it and you need more sleep. And the other guys were like, oh, I let my girlfriend have a nap when she's tired because women need more sleep than men, trying to be all like woke and stuff. And I'm just there like, it's all bull crap. I mean, I'm not saying you don't need more sleep. You need, have more. If you're tired, you might need more sleep. But the problem is by separating it out by men and women, you created a divide that was never there and didn't need to be.
What time of your life as well? I mean, like, if you've been breastfeeding and child rearing and stuff like that, you might need more sleep at that point in time. But...
Exactly. And also, like, some humans need more sleep than other humans. Some people need 9 hours of sleep. Some people can function just as well on 7 hours sleep. There's no female-male correlation in that study, in any studies that they've done. So I found that very frustrating on social media. I found that because that's something that I might perpetuate. So I made a point to look that up, to find the study. But I tried to find it, and all I could find were these deep, these articles saying this isn't actually true. You need to stop talking about it like that.
Well, there you go. But that's consigned to some people forever. Some people just say that forever now, won't they? Mm-hmm. People do it with individuals as well. Like, if someone's seems to have had merit years ago because they did Owen Jones wrote that book Chavs years ago about how the working class had been maligned.
Now I want to read it though.
Okay, well, so Owen Jones wrote that book years ago. I think that's got a lot of merit to it, probably a lot of it, like the way that working people were spoken about over a certain period of time as if they're deplorables, etc., etc. But you can end up spending the rest of your life judging him on the basis of that one, what you consider well-meaning argument. Does that mean you then don't fully interrogate anything else that he's said for the rest of his journalist career? If you just think, oh, well, he's written a good thing, he's one of the good guys, he becomes that in your head forever, potentially.
That's very true.
It's not just him. I just picked him out because he happens to have written a book, which I would probably have agreed with some stuff, and I don't agree with some stuff he now said.
But I think it's the nature of humans or nature of some humans, to want to continuously grow and learn. So, like, from my point of view, it would be frustrating, but I have definitely learned things, and I would hope that I continue to learn things over my lifetime that I would look back on and then think, ooh, perhaps that was a bit insensitive of me, or I didn't really explain that very well, or that was bad, And I'm not saying mistakes. I mean, like, things we thought were right at the time, and then later we look back and we go, no, I should have been a bit more sensitive then, or I used to, something like that. So I would say to someone, if this is what I think, this is what I know right now, but I would hope that later they would realize that I'm only human as well, so they can't just take everything that I say as gospel.
This is the problem with having human beings as role models. Well, speaking of opinions and stuff and reevaluating things, we're going to talk about the Bible.
Yeah, that's what you said.
I did a little sketch which just dragged itself to respectability last week. So I reread the beginning of Genesis as research. So I had to buy the Bible.
You don't have one?
No. I had it when I was a kid. I assume it just got, I didn't burn it or anything. But I just... Because, I stopped using it as a practical...
Yeah.
Also, have been reading a lot about the history of the Middle East, and I never really thought about the Bible as being a historical document of the history of the Israelites. And it's very debatable as to how much of the history of that is true.
Yeah.
Obviously, like the exile from Egypt and stuff, but there's no real evidence of quite a lot of things. I was interested in having a look at some of that again until I got it, and then I realised how absolutely massive the Old Testament is with all these, just this king doing this and this specific massacre and all this. And you think, oh, goodness me. When I went to buy it I'm sorry it was off Amazon, but it's just so easy to buy things off Amazon, isn't it?
I'm the same.
Noam Chomsky says it's okay to use Amazon. I forget why. If Chomsky said it was all right, gives me some cover. Not that I'm like a Chomsky stan or anything, but like if a prominent left-wing intellectual says it's all right to use Amazon, there must be an argument somewhere. I won't interrogate it further. I'll just get it because it's so easy.
You like him, so you believe him.
I don't like him that much. I like Manufacturing Consent. I think that's a really interesting film. So I got these. So when I bought the Bible off Amazon, I thought I'll get the King James version because that's the classic English-speaking one. When I went to buy it, it said people that bought this item also bought the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita, and I was just like, why would I buy all three?
But now you've bought it, you're like, I wish I had the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita.
No, I bought them all at the same time because I just ticked the thing. So I just thought,
they got you.
They did, yeah.
The marketing got you.
Bhagavad Gita is only like 100 pages.
Yeah, I've read it. It's good.
Yeah?
It's a required text for most yoga teacher trainings.
Okay.
Have you read all of the New Testament?
All the way through?
At some point in your life.
At some point in my life, I would have read the Gospels.
What I would say is there is one book, and I just can't remember which one, just for your reference in future, like one of the apostle books, like say John, that has all of Jesus' stories in it. And then some of the other ones repeat the same stories from a different perspective. But one of them has them all. So if you're looking for some of the Jesus stories, find the one that has them all. And then you just look at that one and then you've got it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it didn't take that long to read all of them anyway. It's not hugely...
But it's repeating.
Yeah, but it's repeated. But they are different though, because they were written in different times where there's been a re-evaluation of...
Yeah.
So the first Gospel is like... I can't remember if it's Luke or Mark. The first Gospel was written in like 70 AD when the temple got destroyed by the Romans. So it's got a different sort of angle between like another 50 years later when Christianity sort of separates itself less as a sector of Judaism. Then John, I think, is the latest one that has a slightly different tone to it, I believe.
Okay.
I was listening to something the other day, so this is not from my recollection, but when Jesus is being crucified and shouts, "Why have you forsaken me?" I think that's only included in that specific gospel, and that's the one that happened when the temple came down. The temple coming down is like a massive psychological thing for the Jewish people anyway, isn't it? It was like when the Romans destroyed it, so it's kind of tied in with the psychology anguish of that is maybe the reason why was that gospel has a specific tone. There's other gospels as well that didn't make it into the supposedly canonical is probably, some people would be angry for it to be for it to be referred to as canonical, but they're not included in the biblical canon. I don't know if I've noticed for sure, but I think there might be some gospels that don't even say that Jesus came back from the dead and stuff.
I definitely have seen them, but I haven't read them. Because I think by the time I got to the stage where I thought about reading books that weren't included in the Bible, I wasn't overly keen on doing that kind of study anymore.
Yeah.
So I stopped.
Fair enough.
So I don't think I've actually read the books that weren't included.
Being detached from being religious for quite a long time, like since I was a kid and stuff, I think it'd be quite interesting to reread the Gospels in terms of looking at Jesus's sort of moral philosophy rather than, you know, like this is God. When you are growing up and you're told, well, you know, you've got to believe in like mystical stuff like the virgin birth and the raising from the dead. I mean, that's such a stretch for anyone to really believe in the current age. I mean, a lot of Christians, I don't think even literally do believe that now.
Oh yeah, so some people obviously will believe actually genuinely, and that'll be that. But I think a lot of the time people do kind of grow into a point where they're like, I don't necessarily take this literally. Yeah. I think it's like a figuratively thing that we can live our lives by. But one of the things that I found, say when I was in my teens kind of age, and we were, you know, still quite, obviously my family was religious, was that I enjoyed understanding what I was reading from a historical perspective, similar to what you're thinking, like, oh, if I look at it now, would I still agree with it? But more like, you know, would it still hold up to today's morals and stuff? But also from point of view of like, well, what was happening then at the time? Why was he saying that? What was going on in the world? Why, you know, that kind of thing. And I find that aspect of it quite interesting because it puts things into perspective more. Because I think a lot of people who like to nitpick at the Bible tend to nitpick a sentence or two and then pretend like it means something. And it's like, you could take any sentence and make it mean anything. You have to understand the context of the whole thing. You can't just, you're not just the whole chapter, but the whole world at the time.
Yeah, it's a very different world. You can't like completely take the morality of, especially the Old Testament, and transcribe it directly onto the... There is a religious argument that would say that, you know, like that was revealed at a time when that was the kind of thing that was needed to be told to people, and so the nature of, this is not me saying this necessarily, but like the nature of the truth of God revealing himself to people the message would be different at different points during the evolution of human civilization.
Yeah.
I don't think I really believe that, but like that's the argument.
Yeah.
I don't tend to like unfalsifiable arguments. But this is like the ultimate unfalsifiable argument, which I'm kind of sticking up for in a way, but only because I find a lot of the ways that people that don't believe it refute it in ways like that, when you sort of think there are many more ways that you can refute having a religious belief than just like say, well, quite clearly the ark didn't happen and stuff, and like, well, of course it didn't.
Yeah, because I also think like there's a lot of overlap as well between a lot of different religions. So I've sometimes wondered, like, again, is it like a bad game of what do you I think you call it Chinese whispers here, but we call it telephone in America, where it's like, someone said something and then by the time you pass it on to someone else, the meaning's changed, and by the time you pass it on to someone else, the meaning's changed, and before you know it, you've got 10 different religions instead of one.
You get 10 different religions in a religion as well, don't you? I mean...
Well, yeah, I mean, not talking about that aspect, that ridiculous aspect of it, but that's more like choice. I think that's a choice. The different religions in Christianity come from choice. People have chosen to change it. They say they don't believe that that's what that means, and so they have created their own sect and their own section.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen that even in my life. I've been to small groups that are like that split from the bigger groups because they believe that means something else. They've got the same information and they've made a different choice with it. But I do think that maybe there's something in the background there that could link things together. But I don't necessarily mean that that's like a god or a religion or, it seems a bit odd that they link so well.
Yeah, but that's because the thoughts influence each other. This is why I want to read the Gospels and think about Jesus as a moral philosopher, because how much of the influences of what Jesus has said has gone into Christianity compared to what Paul has said afterwards, and also because Paul was being an apostle in like Greece and stuff, so a load of Aristotelian thought finds its way into Christian theology because that just got co-opted at some point. What influenced Jesus to say what if he wasn't coming from a divine place, what influenced his philosophy? Was he like a unique, completely, like, obviously, like, you'd say that he's one of the most consequential historical figures like of all time, without like he's top 5. He's right up there with John Lennon and stupid names, I didn't mean that, but like he's there at the top of the tree pretty much, isn't he, like in terms as an influential character. Not that he'd necessarily approve of everything that's been done in his name, he probably wouldn't do, would he? So is he a true original, or was some of his thought influenced by, because it's quite similar to a lot of Eastern thought, isn't it?
Well, he went into the East and
right.
That's where he lived for a long time. So most of his ideas did stem from that area of the world. He travelled.
What, so did he go in the East between the age of like 2 to 30? Because he sort of suddenly miraculously...
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he was like a little baby crawling around in China, but something.
No. But like, that's quite an unaccounted part of his life, isn't it?
Yes.
Like, you get the nativity stuff, which is, again, something that is probably like... did not literally happen. There's a lot of debate over whether the census happened there was a census in Judea or wherever, but it probably wasn't at the same time as the birth of Christ, and there also the slaughter of the innocents. There's absolutely no evidence for that.
Right.
More than one king was called Herod, so it's a bit confusing.
Yes, that is a bit of a confusing bit that I know historians struggle with.
It's probably not a virgin birth either, because there were actually loads of virgin births around the time. Loads of messiahs, loads of people rising from the dead. It's true, like...
It was the virgin birth because they had a funny mushroom and they don't remember.
Entirely possible.
And now they've got a virgin birth.
Oh God, not another one. So that's not an uncommon thing, which is another thing people that are like...
Right, I didn't know that. I've not heard that idea before, that there were lots of virgin births around at that time. I think that's really interesting. That's actually kind of funny.
I think the idea that you have to believe in all this like supernatural stuff it doesn't seem feasible, the miracles and...
Well, when I was a teenager, I basically said to my family and stuff, I said, everything, if you want to believe this, that's fine, but everything in here has got to be proven by science. Because in the end, why would a god create something and then not use it? I don't know, say all the fluff around him walking on water and stuff like that. It's like, well, let's say you walked on water, but you didn't actually walk on water because that's physically possible according to physics. So maybe he was walking on ice, but it doesn't matter if he was walking on ice or not, because in the end you believe if you want to or not. But why would a god create a whole universe and then not use it to create the miracles and then use some magic outside of it? It doesn't make any sense. I don't know. That's what I struggled with. It was like people are like, oh, I can prove that Jesus didn't walk on water, so therefore he wasn't divine. It's like, it doesn't make someone divine or not if they know where to step. It's a bit like, just because, I don't know, I just found that like a really lame excuse, you know? It's like, people can believe what they want to believe, and I think that every miracle should be should have an example of how it could be proven with using science.
It wouldn't be a miracle then, would it?
That is how life works. Well, that's my point, is it is still a miracle if you want it to be. If you could fall from, you know, it happened, you know, people fell from really high heights that should have killed them, but it didn't. Is that a miracle? No, it just means they fell in just the right way.
Right. So Jesus put his foot in just the right place in that sea or whatever.
Maybe he was just very buoyant when he was...
Been working on his technique for months to be able to run across the...
I like that it's like a skit he was working on.
Yeah, it could be. It could well be, you know. A miracle's not something that like, works in the realm of what we understand physics to be able to guess, I would say.
Yeah, but I would say, like, if you went somewhere and there was a real problem and someone stepped up and fixed that problem, you'd be like, oh, thank goodness. What a fantastic job. Oh, what a miracle you were here.
No, but it wouldn't be a miracle. It'd just be a strange coincidence.
What a strange coincidence.
Yeah.
You were here.
Not a miracle, though, is it?
But I'm just saying it's not a far leap
a miracle
to use
is
a
if
different
someone
frame.
that didn't have any training to fix this sort of thing just somehow immediately knew what to do and didn't feel like in control of their own faculties while they were doing it.
They were possessed by a ghost.
That would be a miracle. It would be more miraculous. There may still be an explanation for that. But
what I'm saying is you don't know on the day when it happened what their actual reaction was. And now someone's taken it and written it down and said it was magic. But at the time, they might have just said, oh, thank goodness you were here because you sorted out this big problem we had. But they didn't think it was magic. You know what I mean?
Who didn't think it was magic? The people in the Bible.
Well, you don't... Like, yeah, because in the end, it's third hand, isn't it? Because it was the Greek people who happened to have this scenario. Then someone wrote it down later. Then someone translated it. So you're talking about third hand scenario.
Yeah.
So what words did they use to really describe what happened? And did they genuinely think it was magic?
Well, they lived in an oral tradition anyway.
No, he could have written it down years after it happened.
Yeah, but it would have been passed on. I mean, if he's such a significant like historical figure that it was such an amazing story and that he influenced so many people, then it would make sense that the story would live at least 70 years after he died.
Yeah, but I'm saying is, at what point did it become magic? Because it might not have been magic at the time.
It might not have been magic. It might not have been magic.
So, not just literally, but I mean, even in their minds, they might not have thought he was doing magic when he produced loads of fish.
And was he the only person that did miracles around that time? Probably not, really.
Yeah.
This is where I think it just becomes kind of daft and easy to ridicule. Like whenever the Catholic Church try and make someone a new saint, and they have to traditionally have 2 miracles attributed to their name.
Oh, I didn't know that. I don't know much about the Catholic religion, so I'll just say that right now. Okay,
right.
Now continue.
Don't think I'm an expert in it, please. But like when they beautify a saint, you can only become a saint if you can attribute 2 miracles to them. And I don't know if they're stopping this or not because it's just getting dafter and dafter. But they always end up being able to go back into the archives and find a time where Mother Teresa once touched somebody and their verruca disappeared or something. Imagine being stuck on 1 miracle as well. Like
I've done 1 miracle, but I haven't got my second one yet. Cross my fingers.
But that's the institution of it becoming a church and a political organisation and something that's used to obtain cultural or political power. Then you know that obviously goes into the against religion column for a lot of people. I don't think Jesus would be particularly happy. I mean, look at the way that he sort of like has a go at the people in the temple and stuff. Like,
have you ever read the Jesus Papers?
No, I haven't.
Did I tell you about this? I think I've told you about this.
I think you mentioned it.
I mean, again, this is another one of those. Maybe you want to find an updated article on it and they'll be like, oh, it's another load of tosh. But I liked the Jesus Papers when I read it.
What are they again?
So it was about 8 years ago now, but I think the Jesus Papers are like an old, I think it starts out where someone found some urns and they were basically what you might class as like missing books of the Bible. In a sense, they were from that time period, and it just documented more of Jesus's life and stuff like that. But I just remember thinking the way the book was written, it was extremely scientific and really from a historical perspective, not from a religious perspective. And in that way, it was a very interesting read because he was just talking about history, not, Jesus' miracles and what you can learn from it, or a self-help book. It's not written like that, it's written as a history.
I mean, the only reason he's doing the miracles anyway is that's not anything to do with his moral message and stuff. Presumably it's just a way of, like, if we're taking this as... basically, of giving himself legitimacy to be able to say these things.
Is that his version of TikTok?
A little bit. Isn't it?
And I heard lots of different things about it. Honestly, you're just bringing back all the memories. The bringing back someone from the dead thing. It's like, people just instantly come up with how it could be possible to bring someone back after 2 days and things like that, or they just fall into what people think is death because they didn't have the right instruments. There was things about leprosy that term was incorrectly translated, and he wasn't healing them from lost limbs or anything that we would consider as leprosy today. He was healing them from like scales and blisters and wounds and things like that. It was like a different term for leprosy, and it was like, it just goes on and on. You can retranslate the whole Bible if you want. Because there's another thing as well, as I studied 2 years of ancient Greek in high school. A lot of Greek words mean multiple words. It's very similar to English, to be honest. A lot of our words mean more than one thing.
There's a famous one, because isn't there a quote about being easier for a rich man to get into heaven than a camel to pass through the eye of a needle? But I think the word camel I think it was very similar to the word rope. So it's more feasible for a rope to get through the eye of a needle than a camel. I mean, it's still...
I prefer rope, I've decided.
Yeah.
Well, then a rope, you could take it apart and one piece through at a time. Yeah. It would be hard, but it could actually happen.
Yeah, it's feasible. That just gives rich people to get out. So, someone the other day was talking, like one of my Facebook friends as a comedian was talking about, he's a Christian, but you wouldn't know it from his lifestyle. But he
one
was,
of those. No, I'm joking.
One of them. I don't know his relationship with the whole thing, to be honest.
I remember when I came to England, it was the first time, because I'm from the Deep South as well, most of my teenage years and adult years, that it was the first time that I came across people who would claim to be a religion, but had no action based on that religion. I found that really shocking.
That's basically Anglicanism.
Like, I didn't really realise that was a thing you could do. I assumed that if you decided you were a Christian, you would go to church every Sunday.
No, you just wear a cross over your neck and go once at Christmas. That's...
Exactly.
No.
Or like...
You pray for your dead relatives. That's all you do.
Yeah. But I mean, maybe that's the point, isn't it? Once you start stepping out of your comfort zone more and more, you find more and more, I don't know, options? Is that I suppose it's technically an option. Yeah, you could say you're religious and then not do anything. Like, loads of people say they're a certain religion because of the way their parents baptized them, even though they had no choice in the matter and they didn't go to church after that.
People are cultural Catholics that aren't practicing Catholics, aren't they?
Yeah.
Say that.
I never understood that concept before.
Well, it's because
I never heard of it before.
I mean, you could consider it quite an indoctrination, perhaps, because there's a little bit more fire and brimstone with Catholicism. It's a bit more like, don't masturbate or you go to hell sort of stuff. Entirely healthy thing to be telling 14-year-old boys.
Yeah.
Mind you, I hear Catholicism's doing quite well.
Except today on the news, the Pope said something about too many gay guys in there.
Oh, did he?
Or something.
Okay.
Yeah, right. It was just today on the news. So.
Yeah, he's got to give him a bit of red meat every so often, doesn't he? So this guy was being prompted and said, oh, do you believe all that stuff? And he just said, oh, it's complicated.
On Facebook you have relationship and one of the options is it's complicated.
Yeah.
I feel like you should have religion and then one of the options say it's complicated.
I think I mentioned it before. Tom Holland, the historian, wrote a book called Dominion a couple of years ago, which I think is really, really good, about how we don't really realise how culturally Christian the whole of Western society actually is. Even if we're not actually believers in God and stuff, we're still culturally very, very Christian. So if you start thinking about religion as the way that Richard Dawkins originally coined the term meme, and to mean like a reproducing cultural idea, the most successful cultural ideas are the ones that survive and thrive evolutionarily in the same way an organism would do. So there's something very successful about current world's religions because they've obviously tapped into something with enough people for them to be, a successful model of building society. So if you're like a society of 50 people, then that's fine. But once you get to building societies of hundreds, it's a lot more difficult to maintain order. So there's an argument that the reason religions are evolutionarily adaptive or whatever is that they've been quite useful in binding large groups of people together to work towards a higher ideal, and that will more successfully build a society. So that could filter out people that feel less sense of spiritual religiosity, or that do not have the feelings of these like transcendent transcendent experiences where they feel the love of God just get filled out as time goes on. Because, so I think it's a genuine sort of experience people have.
Yeah.
However real it actually is, whether it's some psychological...
I know, but I just find these terms all wrapped around religion, like feeling God's presence and the love of God and, having Jesus guide you and things like this, trusting God and stuff, because, you can't control your life and things. And it's just like, you can just have those same ideals and those same principles and use a completely different language that has nothing to do with religion.
Yeah.
Like fate and, coming back to your resilience and, feeling the warmth and presence of being in right now. All these like more mental health terms you could use. Some people find it frustrating if they've had bad experiences in religions to hear those kind of phrases, like feeling the presence of God and stuff like that. And then other people are like, oh, but I had a really nice experience when I was meditating. And they might describe that as something which could just mean the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just a spiritual experience. One's religious and one isn't, in a sense.
That would not be as evolutionary successful as an idea, I don't think, in terms of like that won't catch on without the extra we're working towards, going to heaven eventually and like all that kind of stuff that you would have to bind the society together to work for something higher than you. That's one reason why we can't just all say, oh, why don't we all just think like that now. The other way of thinking about it would be you're using very similar language to religion because we are all still culturally religious and just co-opting religious ideas into other things now that we have. Now, I don't know whether chronologically that would be correct or not because I don't know enough about the
like saying universe instead of God, but it just means the same thing.
So people are just using the same mimetic ideas. So if you look at like the idea of human rights and stuff, it's a Christian idea. There's not necessarily God involved in that, but the idea that every human being has like a level of dignity and we're all equal under God. So you just take God out of that and say that we're all equal on the basis of what? So why has a human life got dignity if you don't have...
Right, I see.
So it's just a Christian idea.
But then you didn't have that problem necessarily in places that didn't have Christianity.
What problem?
The problem of human rights, like not having human rights, like that wasn't...
Well, no one had human rights. People were slaves. People have been slaves till like yesterday in human history.
Yeah, I mean, they're still slaves right now. Don't buy fish because everybody on fishing boats is slaves. Yeah, but we'll talk about that next time.
Don't buy phones because people mining cobalt are slaves. But
exactly.
But like, we didn't think it was a wrong thing until yesterday in human history because it's been a constant throughout. Like everybody did it everywhere.
But I'm thinking like on a smaller scale. Oh, I suppose that probably what separated out is you would assume that your tribe had rights, not human rights.
Yeah.
Is that... Yeah, okay.
Christianity has not got any there's no like racial element. Anybody can just like, you can all be, brothers in Christ and stuff. If you go to a church, you could still have a church community where the richest person in the town talks to the poorest person in the town because they both go to the same church. Yeah. So it's a socially cohesive thing. It's quite good.
It's a great way to get money as well.
It's also a great way to make money. Yeah. I'm not being, I'm just saying stuff.
I'm just picking.
Yeah. But and you look at the climate change movement, there's so much Christianity involved in that. There's the apocalypse. There's the deification of children.
Children? Why are we talking about children? I thought you said the environment.
Yeah, but like the children involved in it, like the pure sort of...
Oh.
And then we have to starve ourselves. That's a sort of a kind of a religious ideal of like fasting and just like preparing ourselves to not need so much material stuff for the impending apocalypse where we're all going to be judged because we didn't do enough recycling and stuff. Like, it's all like, and I'm not saying anything that is wrong or anything.
No,
but
you're right. I know what you mean.
Most of those people probably don't believe in God, but you can see why the ideas are appealing to people that have been brought up that maybe have some sort of unfulfilled religiosity in the human mind because we've evolved with religion, so we sort of need to fill the hole somewhere. You can see how you can sort of cut one thing out and immediately replace it with some other cause or something and use a lot of the same ideas.
How about we have more religions that worship nature? That could help, rather than Christianity.
I'm talking about the political movement more than I'm talking about like... one with nature.
Again, I don't know. You have all the religions around the Greek gods and the Roman gods and all the temples and everything they built and everything that was wrapped around the worship of those gods. And they had political power is what I mean.
Yeah.
Because the Roman Empire was massive, so they obviously had that political power. But then I suppose they did that through slavery. So maybe that's the difference, is Christianity managed to do it without as much slavery.
Well, it still did, I guess, for a bit, but
questionable.
We did. Well, Christians did get rid of slavery.
Yeah.
William Wilberforce was an evangelical Christian. I suppose eventually managed to talk round a lot of, liberal Christians in the 1700s that slavery might not actually not be a great thing by using the Christian message. But of course, there's loads of stuff in the Bible that would legitimize slavery if you wanted it to.
But in the Old Testament, obviously, they laid out the Hebrew laws. It was just a very different way of thinking about it, but basically, things like instead of all being around money and punishment, it was more like, well, you don't have any money, so what are you going to do? Oh, well, you're going to be an indentured servant, basically.
And that's fine because you'll be rewarded in the future. So, well, that's what people would say about using Christianity as well, not just Christianity, but like specifically like in the West, using Christianity is a useful idea to subjugate people that were not going to achieve anything of material value in their lives, because you could just say to them, if you're still a good person, then you'll be rewarded after that. So again, you can see that why it's a successful cultural idea, because a lot of people went along with that because they were like, oh fine, well, I'm not going to be the king, but at least if I do the right
Maybe
thing
I'll be a
myself.
king in my heaven. Exactly,
yeah, that sort of thing. So, so they're not saying this stuff without an air of cynicism as to the way these things have been used.
But do you think that it's kind of like almost like an intellectually evolutionary thing that has to happen? Like, first you do this, then you believe this, then you evolve past that, then you evolve past that, then you evolve, like almost in a thought process, almost like a belief in thought. Like, now that we have formed our amazing cities and countries that are absolutely perfect and have nothing wrong with them,
yeah, of course, yeah.
do we now let go of this idea that there needs to be a God that's orchestrated it all? Because now we have grown past that and we can orchestrate it ourselves and work together ourselves because we just want a better life for ourselves, and that's a good enough reason.
What I'm going to say now, it sounds like it's going to be my argument for everything, but what you've just described is the idea of progress.
Yeah.
Which is a Christian idea, because Christian idea is that we are progressing morally.
I don't disagree, but I would strongly disagree that there aren't in Eastern religions that are older than Christianity that would have put that idea forward first.
All right. Bow down to your knowledge of Eastern philosophies and religions then.
I just mean Christianity, in terms of religions, is a newer religion.
Yeah.
In terms of like other religions, like ones that come out of China and Japan, even in India and things like that. And those religions all push bettering yourself as a person in growth.
Yeah, but do they push the idea of like creating a sort of Jerusalem, heaven on earth type of thing, which is kind of a Christian idea?
No, that's an interesting point. Like creating the utopia. If
it's an individual thing, it's
physical.
different, but I'm talking like progression of society. So this whole stuff about the moral arc of the universe moving in one direction is a Christian idea. Whereas I think, this is me reading one article by a critic, on a lot of other religions don't necessarily believe in progress, but believe in cycles more. Like if you're believing like a religion that has sort of like reincarnation or something as a belief system or something, you're not necessarily believing in the progress morally of...
Absolutely you are. Because the only way you're a human is if you progress to that stage. You just did it over multiple lifetimes. Right. One of the biggest things about being reincarnated is that you believe you got not lucky as in luck, but lucky as in like you have finally got to the point where you have progressed to a stage where you can now reach enlightenment if you put your effort in this lifetime. If you don't, you might go back to being an animal again because you chose not to do that. Even though it's cyclical, it's not. It's progression.
That's still talking about the individual level. It's not necessarily talking about societal level, yeah.
So where in the Christianity or Christian, there we go. Where are you getting the idea that there is a cohesive governmental idea for growing as a society? Where
I'll get back to you next week.
No, Old Testament or New Testament. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I've never really got that impression when I was. But maybe that's because I was looking at from a point of view of how can I apply this to my life, and that was kind of narrowed in.
I think there is a Christian idea of creating a heaven on earth before Christ comes back. I can't really back this much further up other than I've read a critique anyway, so where the idea of moral progress societally is a Christian idea, and whether that comes from the idea that when the Old Testament was delivered, we lived in a very different moral landscape to the one that then Jesus came, and then we built from that, and then you would say there'd be moral progress from biblical times to the life of Christ and so on. That would constitute a moral art, because the message needed to be redelivered in a more non-violent sort of way.
And also, I think in the Old Testament, there was a lot of separation between peoples, whether that was because of physical boundaries or just because things we might today call racism or whatever. But like there was a lot of separation between different peoples. And I know Jesus obviously did preach that we're all the same. Perhaps that's part of the idea of growing as a society is in the New Testament, where he's saying move past these fake separations that you've created for yourself.
And I'm a bit on shaky ground defending this progress thing, but I feel like that made sense to
No,
me.
I'm trying to make you. I was just wondering if there's something that I missed. But maybe as an overarching theme, it could be there.
You know, the reincarnation thing, if the world population is starting to go down, it's going to mean that you're going to have to work even harder to come back as a human being in the next life, because there just won't be the space. So the next couple of generations of human beings in the population slowdown are going to be really good human beings, because they would have had to work damn hard.
Yep. Well, I find that very interesting, because like, how would that link in then with like a strict sect of Buddhism, where they, sweep the path to not squash any bugs while they're walking, and, they don't eat anything that comes from an animal? Are they not morally taking the high ground even more than Christians? And they wouldn't have slaves then if they're not even going to use a bug.
Yeah, and again, I don't know.
I
I don't know how well we're distinguishing how a society is successfully moving from a moral place to another place, of whether it's a more individualistic thing. I mean, I would say my guess would be, and you might shoot me down immediately here, that a lot of the Eastern sort of Buddhist kind of thoughts are more about the relieving the suffering of an individual and reaching enlightenment as an individual, rather than as a sort of a societal thing.
Yeah, but as part of that, you can't hurt anything.
Yeah.
So wouldn't that then, as a society, show that you can't hurt anything? So you're saying that as a Christian idea, we got rid of slaves, but is there any evidence that they did that before? Because, Buddhism is like all 5,000 years older than Christianity or something ridiculous.
There have been violent Buddhists and sects, though, haven't there?
Of course. And there are Buddhist sects that are not vegetarian now. So, there's definitely obviously sects of different things. But I'm just wondering, as a progression.
I could say the Quakers are great and the rest of the Christians are mad, but they would be the same thing.
If there's an area, I know that's just an example, say if there's an area of China that had no slaves first, would you not say that then it was a Buddhist idea to get rid of slaves rather than a Christian idea to get rid of slaves?
Yeah, well, I suppose you would, perhaps, yeah.
So, but, yeah. That's kind of what
we're
I'm saying.
We're not necessarily disagreeing. This is two different parts of the world we're talking about.
Oh, okay, right. So it's happening at the same time. Got it.
Right. Well, no, I'm talking about Western civilization.
Okay.
In the civilization I live in. I mean, I don't know enough about all of
I see what you're saying, like their influence was so late coming to our area of the world that it hasn't influenced our society the same way it would have influenced their own societies.
Yeah, and also how, again, if you think about specific religions as cultural memes or like as evolutionarily successful ideas, there will be reasons why some spread more easily than others. It'd be probably fair to say that Christianity and Islam have managed to spread a lot more so than a lot of the Eastern ideas, and I don't know whether that's to do with like differences in the way that various infrastructures are built up and as to who's been able to travel further or not, but the message itself has obviously been a culturally successful one that has been able to spread. I don't know how how appealing spreading an idea that you have to brush the floor in front of, I mean, I can see how that wouldn't necessarily build a hugely successful like economic society as well. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Whereas a society which just says that you do bad things because you're a human being, but then you go to a priest once a week and confess that, is much more successfully co-opted by people, I think.
Yeah.
And not to say that's a cynical way of it being co-opted, but we're human beings with positive and negative sides, so there'll be positive reasons why the religion's successful and negative reasons perhaps as well, or certainly the way it's been implemented. As I said, I was reading Genesis and I was thinking, this is obviously nonsense.
Well, on the sixth day, God created fish or something. But then it isn't, because the things that happen in order are the order of things that happen when planet formation and evolution begins. I mean, maybe that was added 100 years later.
But it's obviously like, on a literal sense, it's people not living to 900 years old and all this stuff.
I love that idea.
Yeah. What were they doing back then that was giving them such long lifespan? What's the secret?
They found the perfect gut bug.
Yeah, that's what it was, I guess. But although it's very interesting, like if you read like the Adam and Eve story, the idea of eating from the tree of knowledge and stuff like that, I think that's quite a deep idea. Do you think that yoga sort of replaced religion in your life?
Well, the thing is
I didn't mean that in a horrible way. I just think humans like ritual and like meditation replaces prayer, and I know to look for Christian reasons why you're doing all of the yoga stuff, but
I do think that, like, when I first got into yoga, obviously I was still understanding where I wanted to be at, or growing from improv religion or whatever like that. And I think I was a little bit, obviously I first thought yoga was just movement, and then I realized that it wasn't. But then when I first got into the more philosophy side of yoga, I thought, oh, this is just philosophy. There's no religion here. Not unless you want there to be a religion. You can go find an Eastern religion to use with your yoga, but you don't have to. Yoga was always separate from religious text. So it's there in some religious texts, but it's also not. So I think in that way, it was quite nice to find, I think it was the first thing that I came across that was outside of religious text that introduced the idea of philosophical thought and ways of being that had nothing to do with religion. So I found that quite liberating, because it meant that you no longer needed this religious figure or this religious views, because everyone's going to agree at some point in time where they come across something, say in their religion or in another religion, that they disagree with. That's why there's so many different sects of Christianity. So if you don't agree with something, and then you're like, oh, but I'm this religion, but now I don't agree with this aspect of this religion, or my pastor's telling me I can't get a tattoo, whatever. It's like, oh, but I didn't think there's anything wrong with tattoos, and now he's telling me there's something wrong with tattoos. I don't know, it could be something silly like that.
The tattoos say Hail Satan on it.
But like, if you find a philosophy, then you're talking about something that is completely different than religion, and it just opens you up to more, almost like a scientific way of viewing things. Like, it's just more open, like, to the philosophies of life. You can kind of let go. So I think in a way it's kind of replaced it, but only in another step, if that makes sense. It's like, oh, well, I was in a box and I didn't even know it. But I'm not saying that, I don't know, you can have two boxes. I don't know. I'm not saying that it's like, with these horrible analogies, but I'm not saying it's like, that all of a sudden you don't have any religion, but I just mean it's like, oh, so when it's really interesting when you finally find someone who's like super religious, and then it's like, oh, but have you read the other books of the Bible that aren't in the Bible? And then they finally expand their vision to read these other books of the Bible that maybe a church of some sort did not sign off on, but they're still ancient texts and they're still real. Some of these old texts, they're not disputed that they're fake. They're real texts that just were decided to be left out. So if you want to believe in the Bible, then you really should read these old ones as well.
Yeah, but that's if you're believing it as a complete word of, like, I don't think a lot of people think that way in the modern world, as it being a literal word. So you can take or leave things from it now, I think.
I would say most religions would disagree with that statement.
Yeah, but
you can't take or leave things. You can't just say, oh, I'll agree with this bit, but I don't want to do that bit. I mean, that's what separates Messianic Judaism from Christianity, is the idea of, oh, I'll do what Jesus said, but then I'll forget about.
That's why Christianity is co-evolved alongside the Enlightenment.
I thought you were going to say something else. It co-evolved alongside that. Can we adopt loads of these old religious things that stemmed from worshipping other gods?
No,
and
I'm
bring
saying
it into Christianity.
No. The reason why it's becomes successful is because of the malleability of a lot of it.
But I think a lot of Christians would say, like, that's not necessarily, like, a lot of people who are strongly religious would disagree with that aspect. It shouldn't be malleable.
Yeah, they would do, but a lot of people don't.
But it's too late. It's already been mailed. Everything's been, that's not a word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, yeah, they've had to, when Copernicus discovered that we weren't rotating around or the whatever, and that we weren't the centre of the universe and stuff, if we're going to take that as on board as true, then the dominant religion in the West was going to have to go along with that or not, and it had to go along with it, and it did. You can believe in Christianity and evolution. It's not necessarily a contradiction, but it is a contradiction if you believe the literal word of God. But I think, as I said, I think a lot of Christians don't even necessarily believe that Jesus was born of a virgin and rose from the dead, but they still believe in Christianity. That's just reality of living in a more scientific world where everything's recorded and we kind of don't really believe in miracles and stuff anymore. Like, if it's going to survive, then, but it'll still be true to people on whatever level. It's just co-evolved alongside society because it's successfully been able to adapt to doing that.
I'm sure somewhere in Revelation there's someone who's decided they know exactly what's happened.
Revelations is again a disputed text because it's just some bloke's visions about the end of the world. Who decided to put that in? It's like making the third Godfather film. You just have to pretend it's not there.
Oh dear.
Never happened. Ended at part 2.
Oh dear.
Should we call that a day?
I think so. Not two contentions, was it?
No.
No.
I just don't know what I'm arguing for at the end of the day. I think I just like... I don't even know what I think after some...
Arguing for the sake of arguing. Thank you everyone for listening to our show. I hope you enjoyed it. I would love to hear your thoughts and comments. I know this one was an interesting topic all around kind of the Bible and stuff like that. So if you have strong views, or maybe don't get in touch. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, no vicars, please.
Obviously, yeah, if you ever want us to cover a specific topic, we're all ears. Not to say that we would know what we're talking about. Just
well, what's new, eh? Anyway, so yeah, see you next month. And like, follow, share, subscribe, all that stuff.